All right, let's talk about the Daisy ad. In 1964, Democrats had dominated the political landscape at the federal level for over 30 years. They'd won most of the big political arguments in that period, and liberalism was so appealing to so many Americans that when Republicans did win, it was largely because they were arguing from a liberal perspective. The only Republican president in that era, Dwight Eisenhower, raised taxes, built the federal highway system, and expanded Social Security. Now, that led to complaints from the more conservative wing of the Republican Party that Republicans had become Republicans in name only, or rhinos. Okay, it was insurgent Republicans that led to the successful nomination campaign of Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater in 1964, a staunch conservative who had led the fight against passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and had also opposed the nuclear test ban. Um, Phyllis Schlafly, who would become famous as sort of an opponent of feminism, wrote and self-published a book entitled A Choice, Not an Echo, to advance the view that Republicans could not win by offering a slightly more conservative version of the liberalism that Democrats were advancing. But instead, they had to clearly differentiate themselves ideologically from liberal ideology. The one problem that the Goldwater campaign had was that Goldwater had a tendency to speak off the cuff and say things that some people thought gave evidence that he didn't fully understand issues like nuclear deterrence. He'd actually bought airtime early on TV just prior to winning the nomination and joked about lobbing nukes through the Kremlin's windows. Lyndon Johnson, who at the time was campaigning for the first time as incumbent president, saw Goldwater's irascibility and tendency towards bombast as a potential Achilles heel, and his campaign crafted the Daisy ad to draw a clear contrast between himself and Goldwater. The Daisy ad was the first of its kind. Starting in the 1950s, presidential campaigns tended to purchase half-hour, half-hour advertising and created documentary-type programming. Where previous negative advertising focused on facts and votes and platforms, the Daisy ad played purely on emotions and the fear that a Goldwater presidency could unleash a nuclear war. I posted a link to the thread on the PowerPoint where it's on the slide where it's at. It only ran one time in September, about 8 weeks before the general elections. They pulled the ad right after that. But the ad was so dramatic and so widely viewed and commented on that it generated a ton of free media as the news organizations discussed it and showed it on their programs. The Goldwater campaign complained about the ad, but the damage was largely done. Combined with the deficiencies inherent in his campaign, Goldwater went on to lose the 1964 campaign in historic fashion, losing the popular vote 61 to 38 and losing the Electoral College 486 to 52. He only won his home state of Arizona and the deep South states of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina. Johnson ultimately took 44 of the 50 states. So what impact do you think the Daisy ad had on the 64 campaign? Was Johnson likely to have won it even if he hadn't run the ad? Was the ad itself over the top? Did it launch a trend towards ever more abbreviated campaign ads that ultimately have coarsened our public discourse? Is our current soundbite culture a logical product of thinking that we can package candidates the way we package products? Something to think about.